Good morning, crime community. I'm here to read out a chapter of Poisoner in Chief. It's called Operation Midnight Climax. Even at the CIA, employees gathered for holiday parties. At the end of 1954 approached, some rinsed punch bowls while others worried about the world. The Office of Security had a special fear that Sidney Gottlieb would spike the punch. It had been trying year, communists in Vietnam had overthrown their French overlords and forced them to flee in defeat. China's alliance with the Soviet Union intensified. Secretary of State John Foster Dulles threatened massive retaliation against any aggressor. Senator Joseph McCarthy declared that 20 years of treason had brought the United States to the brink of the communist takeover, and when NBC reporter Edward R. Murrow broadcast a sharp reply, McCarthy called him the cleverest of the jackal pack, which is always at the throat of anyone who tries to expose the individual communists or traitors. Communists passed the Communist Control Act, which defined the Communist Party of the United States as a clear and present danger, continuing danger to the security of the United States, and stripped it of all rights, privileges, and immunities attended upon legal bodies. Then it voted to create the Distant Early Warning Line, a network of radar stations designed to alert Americans of the Soviets sent nuclear bombs over the Arctic. The CIA had managed to overthrow the Iranian and Guatemalan governments, but those successes seemed less than decisive amid the rush of scary news. Many CIA officers believed that they all that stood there between their country and devastation. They saw threats everywhere. In 1954 ended, they learned of a new one. On December 15th, the ever-vigilant Office of Security circulated a memo warning that the rumors about certain officers using LSD and testing it on unsuspecting subjects could be taken seriously. It said that LSD was then largely unknown, could produce serious insanity for periods of 8 to 18 hours and possibly longer. Given its potency and its unpredictable enthusiasms of officers who had to access it, the Office of Security said it would not recommend testing in the Christmas punch bowls usually present at Christmas office parties. The memo reflected how widely rumors about Gottlieb and the extremes to which he was pushing his mind control project had spread through the CIA. After Frank Olson's death, he had abandoned thoughts of leaving the agency and resolved instead to intensify his commitment. An odd aura came to surround him. He was unique not just in character and background, but because of the nature of his work. And any troubling thought crept into the consciousness of MKUltra scientists following Olson's death. They were blown away by news of breakthrough that came just within a few weeks later. Scientists of the Eli Lilly company working for the technical services staff had in the past few weeks succeeded in breaking the secret formula held by Sandoz for the manufacturing of lysergic acid. They have manufactured for the agencies large quantities of lysergic acid, which is available for our experimentation. Gottlieb's deputy, Richard Lashbrook, wrote in his boss late in 54, "This work is closely guarded secret and should not be mentioned generally." Eli Lilly was now available to produce LSD in what was called tonnage quantities. The CIA was its main customer. Under what Gottlieb called Subproject 18, it paid Eli Lilly $400,000 for a mass produce of LSD. This would be the costliest subcontract in MKUltra's decade-long existence. Assured of a steady supply, he devoted himself to conceiving research projects that might bring him closer to what he believed must be the drug's inner secret. 10 of the first 50 subprojects were directly related to the production and study of LSD. Any systematic study would require controlled experimentation. In the case of LSD, this meant administering it to human subjects in clinical settings that were reactions could be monitored. Neither Gottlieb nor his partners at Camp Dietrich have facilities or potential staff for a sub-project in this scale. It would have to be subcontracted to establish hospitals and medical centers. Most of the doctors and others conducting the experiments, however, could not be allowed to know that they were working for the CIA, much less than the ultimate purpose of their experiments was to give the U.S. government tools for mind control. Maintaining that secrecy required cutouts, front groups that would agree to funnel CIA money to selected researchers. Among the first were two philanthropic foundations, the Geister Fund for Medical Research and the Joshua P. Macy Foundation. At the behest of the CIA, these foundations announced to hospitals and medical facilities that they were interested in sponsoring controlled studies of LSD, which, thanks to the Eli Lilly breakthrough, they could now supply in bulk. With money suddenly available, there was no lack of takers. Almost overnight, one survey of this period concludes a whole new market for grants in LSD research sprang into existence. In the mid-1950s, Gottlieb was subsidized research conducted by many of America's leading behavioral psychologists and psychopharmacologists. Few knew that the CIA was the true source of their funding. Many conducted their CIA-sponsored sub-projects at highly reputed institutions, among them Massachusetts General Hospital, the Worcester Foundation for Experimental Biology, Iona State Hospital, and Mount Sinai Hospital, the University of Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Denver, Illinois, Oklahoma, Rochester, Texas, and Indiana. Other universities included Harvard, Berkeley, City College of New York, Columbia, MIT, Stanford, Baylor, Emory, George Washington, Cornell State, Florida State, Vanderbilt, Johns Hopkins, and Tulane. And medical schools at Wayne State University, Boston University, New York University, and the University of Maryland. Some of these drug experiments required risking the health of particulars, like one of the Walter E. Fernald School in Massachusetts, in which mentally handicapped children were fed cereal laced with uranium and radioactive calcium. Others, especially those involving LSD, were non-coercive and even attractive. Soon after, Dr. Robert High began giving LSD to students, volunteers in Boston, doctors, nurses, and attendants who observed the results began signing up to try it themselves. The same things happened to other research centers. The LSD experiments were only part of what engaged Gottlieb in the early days of MKUltra. The range of his ambition and imaginations were literally mind-boggling. No intelligence officer in history ever searched so intently for ways to capture and manipulate human consciousness. Early in 1955, he wrote a memo listing the materials and the methods he either was researching or wished to research. I'm going to skip all 17 of them. Years later, reviewing the projects that occupied Gottlieb and his technical services staff comrades during the 1950s, the New York Times called them a bizarre grope in the world of science fiction. CIA investigators let their imaginations run, the Times reported. Was there a knockout drug that could incapacitate an entire building full of people? A pill that would make a drunk seem sober? They worked in ways to achieve the controlled production of headaches and earaches, twitches, jerks, and staggers. They wanted to reproduce a man to bewildered, self-doubting, massive, to subvert his principles, a CIA document said. They wanted to direct him in ways that may vary from rationalizing a disloyal act to a construction of a new person. They wanted to be able to get away with murder without leaving a trace. They were aware that it was considered unethical and to experiment on people with drugs without their knowledge, but they decided that unwitting testing was essential if accurate information on LSD and other substances was to be obtained. Soon after Frank Olson died, Gottlieb departed for another of his periodic tours through East Asia. He was there. He participated in the interrogations during which subjects were dosed with LSD. We did do LSD-related operations in the Far East in the period of 53 to 54, he later testified. In 55, Gottlieb was drafted into the plot to assassinate Prime Minister Zhou Enlai of China. A plane that was take Zhou to the Asian African Congress in Bandung, Indonesia, exploded in midair, but he had changed his plans and was on another flight. The next days, China's foreign ministry called the bombing a murder of special service organizations of the United States. An investigation by the Indonesian authorities concluded that a time bomb had blown up on the plane, triggering by an American-made MK7 detonator. The next best option CIA officers decided was to poison Zhao while he was in Bandung. Gottlieb had provided the toxin that CIA turncoat James Cornthal used to kill himself just 2 years earlier. He could come up with something suitable for Zhao. The potion Gottlieb concocted was to be placed in a rice bowl from which Zhao would eat. 48 hours later, after Zhao was back in China, he would take ill and die. Shortly before his attempt was to have been made, news of it reached General Lucien Truscott Jr., who was then deputy director of the CIA. Truscott feared that the agency's ruling in assassinating Zhao would become clear and cause great trouble for the United States. His biographer wrote that he was outraged and he confronted Dulles, forcing him to cancel the operation. Gottlieb's deadly drops went unused. We're going to end here and leave this for tomorrow because this is depressing to read. But I hope you like and subscribe and join the team.